Welcome, everybody. We are back 2 weeks in a row. It was another late night text. Actually, this was not early in the morning. It was late at night, and I went, tomorrow is May 1st. Why don't we do a May forecast? So welcome, everybody. Rick, thank you so much for being game. I mean, this might just have to become our thing. I just get inspired and text you, and you say yes. It's great. It's perfect.
Yes.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here, and thank you all for tuning in. So, Rick, let's dive in. Tell us about May. What are we looking at here?
Well, I feel like the guy who goes to the doctor and the doctor says, I have some good news and some bad news. And he goes, well, tell me the bad news, or, whatever it is. And then the other one's always even worse than you expect. It's like there's good news and bad news. The good news is here we are in May. We're getting used to life in this strange new reality or unreality in which we are all sharing. The shock of it maybe is over. The denial part is maybe over, although I know different people have different levels of their own denial going on in many different ways. But we've now settled into it. And I think what May is Taurus. May is mostly the month of Taurus, well, at least most of the month. And Taurus can't be pushed. You're not going to get there quickly. And I think that there is a reality settling in through the month of May of, really? It's like there's a Paul Simon song at the edge of my brain, and the line in the song is, I'm weary to my bones. And people are weary from different levels. I mean, there are people who are just totally isolated and are crawling walls, and they're weary of that. There are people who are weary of the amount of effort it takes to go out and do business, whatever that is, whether it's just shopping or, getting, gasoline in your car or whatever. And then there are people who are weary that I think, I'm afraid that too many of us privileged people don't keep in our minds hour by hour, day by day. And that's the people who are weary from working 14-hour, 10-hour days on the lines in places where their body, their lives are at risk. And whether it's simply, whether it's the doctors and nurses and ambulance drivers and emergency drivers and Uber drivers and pizza delivery people and people working in the supermarkets. These people are not looking at this, as oh my God, I'm quarantined and therefore I get to recharge my batteries, but they're also weary. The weariness right now is ubiquitous. And so what's the good news? The good news is that we have time to settle into it because nature is giving us a cosmic calling, a wake-up call. We talked about Uranus last week being the planet of wake-up. And just because the last week and a half has been intensely Uranian, actually even up to, yesterday, now that Mercury is moved into Taurus, it is the most recent planet to line up with Uranus. And so we're not done with Uranus. And in fact, as I said last week, all of this is prologue to the longer, deeper story of Saturn squaring Uranus over the next year and a half or so. But I think when it comes to May, it's like the shock of Uranus is largely over. And we have Pluto, which turned retrograde last week. We have Saturn, which turns retrograde next, I think on the 10th. We have Venus, which turns retrograde on the 12th. Yeah. And then we have Jupiter, which turns retrograde on the 14th. So by the end of the month, we have a veritable gaggle of planets. What would be a system of a constellation? There's a good word, of planets that are now retrograde. And of course, when a planet goes retrograde, it's closer to Earth, which means the energy gets louder. The reason why people have difficult times with retrograde planets is not because they're debilitated. It's not because the planet is debilitated. It's because we're debilitated at expressing the louder energy. And so we shut it down and then have to deal with it as projection. The bottom line is that as these planets turn retrograde one at a time, we are going to feel the intensity building. And yet, because from Earth's point of view, the planets aren't moving ahead, it's like we can feel the energy building, but we don't have a way yet to move into the future. I mean, right now on the streets, the big the big discussion, it's more than a discussion, the conflict is open or close. You know, it's today on May 1st, there have been demonstrations yesterday and today all around the United States in particular, that are demonstrations about open it back up, life as normal. Well, unfortunately, or let me say this, whether we open economies or cities or things up, whether we do it suddenly, whether we do it gradually, the fact of the matter is that it's not that easy. This is not just a difficult few weeks and we're done with it. We have a larger lesson, and Mother Nature, Gaia, Pachamama, whatever you want to call her, she's not going to let us get out of this, you know, real quickly. Because if we don't get it right now, if we don't get it correct, if we don't get it right now, then we're going to be dealing with the same thing again in a few weeks, in a few months, in a year, in 3 years. And each time it's going to get successively more difficult until we either wake up or we change in ways that we can't even imagine. That's my opening shot.
Okay. So when you say so what you're saying is that the astrology doesn't necessarily support, or the energy of the astrology doesn't indicate that trying to move move back to normal, quote unquote, or move things along quickly, it doesn't look like that is aligned with the flow of the energy right now, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I would say that's part of what you're hearing. The other part of what you're hearing is is my bias, because as astrologers, we always bring our bias into this.
Right.
And so I just want to be clear about that. But I'm not making this stuff up out of the blue. I mean, the fact is that right now we have the Sun, Mercury, and Uranus all in Taurus, basically saying, move slowly, we will get there. But if you push me, I'm going to actually stop. In other words, don't make me go any faster than I'm going. I'm going to get there. And we have the whole idea right now is that with these Taurus planets, we also still have, from a cosmic point of view, even though many astrologers are saying, well, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is over. That was back in January. No, the fact of the matter is that we have a Jupiter-Saturn-Pluto conjunction that we're moving in and out of and around from late last year all the way through 2021. It's not a done deal. So we have 3 planets in Capricorn, and we have still Jupiter and Pluto. I'm sorry, we have 3 planets in Taurus, the Sun, Venus. Let me do this again. We have 3 planets in Taurus, the Sun, Mercury, and Uranus. And we still have 2 planets, Jupiter and Pluto, in earthy Capricorn. We have the South Node in Capricorn, which is moving over the next few days back into, because the nodes move backwards, the true node, not the mean node. The true node may be overstating what we know about the nodes, but the true node moves back into Sagittarius on May 4th. that alleviates a little bit of the Capricorn energy. But Saturn will move back into Capricorn. The point of the matter here is that we have this weight of energy, and it's not dispersing yet. It's not just a matter of taking our spray isopropyl alcohol and spraying it on January 12th and saying we're done, because now that Saturn and Jupiter are retrograding. Saturn retrogrades, or will be by mid-month. Saturn will retrograde back into Capricorn, and Jupiter is still in Capricorn, but it'll retrograde back over Pluto. And so we're not done with this magnification of this upheaval of the invisible hell realms, shall we say, of Pluto that are invading our boundaries, shall we say, is Saturn. And yet Uranus in Taurus says, I don't want to change. Uranus in Taurus changes slowly because Taurus is a massive, I say massive, I mean it has more mass. The bull is basically, you're not going to move it because it's dense energy. Taurus is dense, and I don't mean stupid, although that's a colloquial, kind of interpretation. I mean dense, as Taurus packs more substance into a place than any other sign. And so you think of what are the things that are most dense on the planet Earth. Well, first of all, it's the element Earth of the fire, earth, air, water. But secondly, it's like something like granite that has been minerals that has been melted in the fires of Pluto's furnace, if you will, in the center of a volcano, which I know you on the island of Hawaii are familiar with that energy. But granite is massive. And I don't mean massive as big. I mean it has a huge amount of density to its mass. And as such, it doesn't change very easily. Granite doesn't flow like water does unless you heat it to a few thousand degrees. Oh, then it flows. But then it has a lot of intensity and power to it. And so I think that with Uranus and Taurus, the flowing is not going to be easily. So coming back to the month of May, we have this energy that is not going away, especially as Venus turns retrograde. Now, Venus is in Gemini. Normally, Venus spends about a month in each sign. And when she retrogrades, she's basically staying in Gemini for like 4 months. Venus turned retrograde. She moved into Gemini the beginning of April, and she doesn't move into Cancer until the beginning of August. That's April, May, June, July, that Venus is in one sign. And so when a planet that normally moves quickly, any retrograde planet, or any planet that it turns retrograde, in particular Mercury, Venus, Mars, the faster ones, when they get retrograde-y, they get heavier. They turn into Saturn. I mean, not literally, but figuratively, because it's the speed at which these planets move that make the effects in our lives. I've used the illustration, I don't remember whether it was even here last week, that if someone comes over for dinner, plays a game of chess with you and goes home, that's exactly the same thing as if that person comes over for dinner, plays a game of chess, stays for a year, and then goes home. It's the same dynamic. That's the difference between the moon and Pluto, or, it's like you can hold your breath for a bad mood. You can't hold your breath for a bad Saturn.
Okay.
So just finishing this thought, we have Venus holding its position in Gemini for 4 months. And so we're crazy with wanting to know what's going on. It doesn't matter what our political or national or religious views are. Venus in Gemini goes, this is making me curious. I want to know what's that about, what that's about. I want to know this, I want to know that, because I want to connect the dots. The problem is that while Venus is moving direct, retrograde, and direct through this shadow period where it spends for months, Venus is also making a square to Neptune. Now, remember, this whole virus thing, I mean, we can blame it on, if we want to look for a cosmic, wasn't astrology great? We can blame it on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction in mid-January. But it was really Mercury going retrograde all through March and doing this dance of like, what the hell's going on? What's happening? Where are we? What's the truth? And Mercury at that time was going back and forth in Pisces and lining up with Neptune in Pisces. Remember, Neptune's only in Pisces 14 years every century and a half. We're a little bit over halfway through Neptune's journey through Pisces. So now, as Venus makes this retrograde dance, most of the month of May, it's exact. The Venus square to Neptune is exact on May 3rd, and then it's exact again on May 22nd. And so both the new moon and the full moon both have Venus squaring Neptune, which makes it difficult to see where we are or what's going on.
So we'll be curious to know what's going on, but it will be hard to know what's going on. It'll be clouded or hard to actually find the truth.
It'll be hard to discern which facts are facts and which facts are just supporting the fantasies that we have. And I don't care what it is that you believe. I mean, look, I only believe in things that are true, but so do you, and your beliefs are different than mine. So where does that?
So good.
And so we're not here talking about right and wrong. We're talking about the difficulty that Venus and Neptune together in square particularly have in trying to discern subjectivity from objectivity, fantasy from reality, dreams and illusions and hopes and previous opinions from the objective data, if there is any out there.
Okay, so Rick, we have Pluto retrograde, Saturn retrograde, Venus retrograde, Jupiter retrograde, and the nodes changing. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a lot, and that's all happening in May. Is there, if we were to look at the invitation or the lesson or the point of each one of those, would we be able to decipher, like, here's how to best work with Pluto retrograde, here's how to best work with Saturn retrograde? What can we do that?
Maybe. I think that the outer planet retrogrades can be subtle. They're most noticeable in an individual chart if they're going over an area of your chart that has other planets in it or makes aspects to planets. I mean, one of the exercises that anyone could do who knows their chart, they could, for example, they could map out the 5 degrees of Gemini to, I think it's 22 degrees of Gemini, where Venus turns direct, but right around there. I'm sorry, where Venus turns retrograde. I could do it. Look at that right here. Venus turns retrograde somewhere here. I'm not sure what. There it is. At 21 degrees 50 minutes. So you can think 22 degrees of Gemini. And then it goes direct. It goes all the way back to 5 degrees of Gemini. So here's a way to work with this, is that if you look in your chart and you figure out where 5 to 20 degrees of Gemini is in your chart, normally Venus will whiz through that in about 2 or 3 weeks. She's coming over for dinner and staying for 4 months. So what area, what house we know it's in Gemini. We know it has to do about, attraction, distraction, multiplicity. Venus is what we're attracted to. So Venus in Gemini loves another idea. It loves a conversation. Venus in Gemini likes to be distracted. Venus in Gemini would much rather make several short trips than one long one. So we know that about Venus in Gemini. But what area of your chart is that in? Is it in the 5th house? Does this mean that you may reconnect with old lovers, for example? And normally that just might be a telephone call once every year or several years. But now, because Venus hangs out there, will something from the past flare up? Is Venus, in the ninth house? And is this totally frustrating because you had the trip of your life planned, to, Ecuador, New Zealand, Antarctica, another island in your little isolated chain there, but, and all of a sudden you can't do that. And so for 4 months with Venus there, you had kind of had this attraction and desire, and now that piece may be frustrated. Or is the retrograde Venus in your 12th house, and whether you can or not, that you really like the idea of doing some spiritual delving and studying. And so the point is, we can look not only at Venus, but any of the retrograde planets and see, first of all, do they impact any planets in my natal chart, particularly by conjunction, opposition, and square, because that's where the noise typically is. But you can drill down further and use whatever aspects you would like. But do that for each of the planets. Saturn is where am I going to meet up with the responsibilities? How does Saturn, if you have any planets at late degrees, late degrees of cardinal or early degrees of fixed, then that Saturn is going to be, conjuncting those or squaring or opposing those planets, backing up. But see, they're complicated because you got Jupiter, you got Pluto coming in a couple of years there. And so it's a very individual thing. I think the overall lesson, rather than tweezing out what the meaning of each and every individual planet is and how that retrograde might impact you, because there's so many possibilities and combinations, the real thing is that it doesn't matter where the planets are in your chart. With this amount of energy retrograde, it's where in my life do I need to stop? Where do I need to look back? Remember, we often use the re-words with Mercury retrograde, but those same re-words work with any planet. How do I need to, recommit? Saturn. It's the again thing. Jupiter is, where can I find opportunities that I passed over, back earlier in my life or earlier in the year, that in fact might have juicy places in which I can grow my life. With Pluto, Pluto as it turns retrograde, and Pluto is a harder one to deal with because it can retrograde direct 5 times over one point because it moves so slowly. And so with Pluto, it's not just a matter of being, kind of doing this backward dancing for a bit. It's the juxtaposition of time and the intensification of what's going on. I mean, if you have planets right now at around 22, 23, 24, 25, 26 degrees of Capricorn, where this alignment, where this cosmic meeting has taken place, or at those same degrees, 24 degrees to 29 degrees of the opposite sign, Cancer, or Aries or Capricorn, then you're getting waves of this stuff. But here's the deal, whether you're getting them individually or not, doesn't matter, because collectively, culturally, planetarily, community-wise, family-wise, we're getting them. And so whether this impacts you directly by having a job where you need to work in an emergency room or to manage a wing of ventilators, in an overcrowded hospital, or whether a loved one is being impacted somehow by this disease, or whether you're sitting off in your quarantined reality behind the Great Wall of Rick or the Great Wall of Amanda, or the Great Wall between the United States and Mexico. If you're hiding off in that, I would say that you're living in an illusion. Remember, an illusion isn't necessarily wrong. It's just based upon wish fulfillment, because illusions turn into reality. Dreams become real. And so, but if in fact You are one of those people that are living in an illusion behind some wall and saying, this doesn't affect me, this doesn't impact me. Well, the retrogrades are here to remind you that you're living in a fantasy of one.
Hmm.
You may share that fantasy with others, but we're dealing with this globally. Now, there are people who are excited that this is happening, even with a loss of life, because of the potential it may mean for opening people's eyes. There are people who are an exact opposite end of that, and saying that's all airy fairy crazy shit, and the only thing we need to do is we need to get a vaccine and inject everyone on the planet and make it so that we can be, that we can go back to work and begin collecting our, monopoly, money or gold bullions or whatever it is. But I think that the lesson of May, the practice that we need to engage in, is patience, which is not the same as retreat.
Hmm.
We need to, we need to, and I know I'm not the only person saying this, but all these planets are saying, in a way, that reality is an internal, external reflection game. We're all standing in the hall of mirrors, and you can't say it's making it, it's making me do this because I'm part of a collective that made it make me do this. And so so May, to some extent, has this energy of, how can I use whatever time I have, even if I have no time for myself, even if I'm an ambulance driver. How do I use my time to create an internal reality where I'm not buying into the fear and thinking that walls are going to protect me? Because the walls are coming down, whether they come down now, this week, this month, this year. I mean, the walls are coming down. The dinosaurs are going to die. And unfortunately, when there are epic changes and dinosaurs die, well, a few thousand other species or tens of thousands of other species may die with the dinosaurs. But we are at the most exciting time humanity has ever been in. And May is totally boring because we don't get to the finish line, but we can't go back. And so here we come full cycle to the weariness. And so the question really becomes, based upon the astrology of the month, it's what can we individually do to combat that weariness? Is watching Netflix and doing jigsaw puzzles and crossword puzzles, and getting into arguments with people in our family the most constructive way? Is going online and starting fights with people who are on the opposite side of whatever, cultural, political issue you might be on? Is that the best way? Or is the best way to go inward to build solidity? Because we don't need a wall if the internal walls on our inside of our body are strong. And so again, I think the message of all these retrogrades, and even with a few wake-up calls, even with the new moon and full moon this month, both have very particular messages about the going in and doing the work. That it's that yes, we need to work on both levels. Many people need to be working in the social sphere, doing whatever it is they do, either to keep social systems running that we need, whether it's power, water, trash, all those kinds of things. People on the outside level need to do work, and that is keeping up whatever the resistance is for the important issues that they believe that the government, which may or may not have, which doesn't have the individual's best interests at heart, keeping that pressure up. What can we do, though, not only on the outside, but on the inside?
Absolutely. And what I'm feeling is that because this shift that is happening is so big that it is requiring a complete shift in consciousness, or elevation of consciousness. If we are to come back to reality, quote unquote, and not create the same exact thing that we've had, that I think most people would agree was not serving humans and or planet and or all beings, the only way for us to shift out of that is to come at it with a different level of consciousness. This is not going to be something that happens in like a couple months or a couple weeks. This is the deep work, and this is the long haul kind of work. And so the universe, in terms of the way the energy is going, it's like, of course this is not going to be fast. Of course, like it can't be, if we're not to go back and just do the same things over and over again. And I started reading this book. It is so good. It's called A Paradise Built in Hell by Rebecca Solnit. Have you heard of this?
No.
Ah, you guys, it is, when you're saying what can we do with this time, like if we need to be patient right now, my daughter's kindergarten teacher said that the definition of patience is waiting with peace. So if we are to wait with peace, what are the things that can help us be peaceful in this waiting? Like you said, not just distract and watch Netflix and pick fights and all that. We can do that, but is that going to be waiting with peace? Probably not. But so I started this book, and it was like debunking the ideas of what human nature actually is. Seems like a very important place for us to start. So this is one of the premises of this book. She went and studied disasters through time. The 1906 earthquake, she went in San Francisco. She went through like 5 or 6 tragedies, disasters. And despite what the media at the time reported was happening, like mayhem, chaos, rapes, all this, like the most base kind of things that you might think might happen in that time. Despite what the media was saying, despite, the prevalent idea, people came together. People were altruistic. People went out on a limb and put themselves in danger in order to help other people. And in talking to the people that went through those times, after the fact, many of them look back with nostalgia and look back at that time as being one of the richest, one of the most fulfilling periods of their life. And so what's interesting about what we're going through is, as far as the astrology says, this is not going to be a flash in the pan, and not that an earthquake or Katrina or any of those things were flash in the pan either. Like the rebuilding takes a long time, but we're going to be in this quote unquote crisis, quote unquote disaster for a while, as far as if the astrology has anything
the word
to say
disaster
about it.
is a good word. And you probably know that its origins mean without a star.
I just learned that from her. So she says that in the book.
Yeah.
This, and then astro is from astro.
And asterism or astrology.
Without a star. Exactly.
Yeah. And so basically, the word disaster really means to be disconnected from the natural order of things. And the Greek word for the natural order of things, which also means beauty, is the word cosmo. And so when you're not connected with the cosmos, that is disaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so what I'm feeling is, so what do we, when we believe that human nature would be one of hoarding, would be one of like, I got to get mine, then people start to defend themselves against that idea. It's not even true, or it hasn't even happened. Right. But people are defending themselves against the idea. But if we start to take the beliefs that we have about human nature and how humans are, and we start to reverse engineer, like, why do I think that? Why do I believe that? Who told me that? And start to really get in touch with what it actually means to be human and what it actually means to be alive. What does it mean to be alive? What do we value about life? And those are the things worth preserving. And one of the things, Rick, I'm sorry, I'm like going off, but you sparked a lot there. I was thinking about, someone said that, maybe the stores will never open, right? And maybe we'll do all of our shopping online. And I had this moment of like, oh God, that's really sad. Like, it's really sad to think that everything will move online. But then I went, but did I actually enjoy my Saturdays where all I did was run around and run errands? Like, did I actually get joy out of that? wouldn't it be even better if when we do get together as humans, we get together around things that feel sacred and fulfilling and meaningful versus like, oh, I got to just go consume a bunch of stuff. Wouldn't it, in some ways, it might be nice to be able to do those things that we need to do to, sustain our lives quickly and efficiently, but then use the time where we're together to have those sacred moments, to have that fulfilling time together. So anyways, I'm just going off, but this to me, what I'm hearing from you and the weariness, I so feel it. Someone said I look tired. It's because right before we got on this call, I was crying because today, is May Day, Lay Day here in Hawaii. And it's my favorite day. It's, we come together, we dance hula. There's the most beautiful festival that we have at my daughter's school. And it's we make late, we come together as a community, we make late together, we listen to live music, the children dance. It is the most glorious day. The jacaranda trees are purple and blossoming everywhere. It's like, it's heavenly. And each year, each grade does a dance. And so the second grade does a dance every year and the fifth grade does a dance every year. And I had this moment of like, my daughters will never do that. They won't do their second grade dance. They won't do their fifth grade dance. And I know we all have our mourning in this process of the things that we're having to grieve. And so I look tired because I've been crying. And it's just this moment of like, wow, this is really, it's really real. And it's really having an impact that we don't even know, the ripple effects. And it's hard to not be able to do the things that actually bring real, true joy. And if it is truly in an effort to save lives and keep people safe, it's like, okay. But if it's the other storyline where it's like, a control thing, it's just, that's where like I get.
Well, there may be a third storyline in that. And, and thank you for being real, for showing up, because that's part of what this is. And keeping that in perspective, of course, is also healthy. How blessed you are that you can be grieving about not doing,
I know,
as opposed to someone who's just lost two close relatives.
Exactly.
Now,
So then
again,
I feel guilty for being even sad about that. I know. But that's,
again, I'm just struggling to keep, I've been hearing too much of this. Isn't this wonderful? And it may be, but it's also, it's the Sagittarian part of all of us that don't have shadows. It's like it's easy to forget that progress, growth, opportunity, evolution is a double-edged sword. If something's going to evolve, something else has to devolve. It's part of the containment of how it works.
Well, and in that book, she talks about how the people would recall these periods of life as the most painful and the most joyful. So it's not.
You also said one other thing though about a peace, that patience is waiting with peace, and I hear that, but I don't think that that's complete, because being peaceful. I mean, one can be peaceful in a very difficult situation. I get that, but being peaceful doesn't mean being lazy. Mm-mm. And it doesn't mean that there isn't work to do, regardless of who you are and what you do. I woke up today actually I had a short conversation with the Leo King, with David Palmer, who played me a video of what was going on less than a mile from his home right near Huntington Beach in Southern California. And it was live drone shots of thousands of people demonstrating on the street, that were basically demonstrating to open the economy. Now, whether that's a good idea or a bad idea, I don't want to get into here. I certainly have, like we all do, I have my opinions. My opinions are based upon the facts that I know, which are probably different than the facts that you know, and there is the complexity. I don't mean you personally, but to
Right.
everyone out there. So my
Right.
purpose here is not to inflame any of these polarizations, but that's not being shown on the media.
Right.
Then I also, in just kind of going through my social media this morning, went and followed a post and it said it was gone. And I have a library of YouTube posts that either I want to get back to watch, or posts that I save that I think are informational that I share with friends. And a lot of them these days seem to be about intelligent medical, some biologically complex instructional videos about what this virus and the research that's going on and the current studies and whatever. And I woke up to this morning that over half of them are gone.
Well,
Not
so
just
what I
one or two, not
I
just
know,
one or two. There was a massive wipe
I
last
know.
night. And so, and again, I'm not promoting, I mean, there are people who would say those are conspiracies. I'm not promoting those ideas. I'm just saying that without lots of ideas, we lose the ability to know what facts are. And that's
Exactly.
part of this whole Neptune thing that's going on right in front of us. And what we can do is we can all write a letter. We can all, make a phone call if anyone remember phones, Skype call, whatever, but there is a place in which we can make our voices heard, because this is not okay.
No,
Again, it
it's not
doesn't
okay.
matter whether you believe what's being shut down or not.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, the same thing has happened to me. Do you know what I've started doing? I've started screen recording the ones that, and some of them are so benign. There's no political agenda. It's literally just human beings sharing their perspective based
Yeah.
on their area of expertise. And they kept getting taken down. I'd go to share it with someone, they were getting taken down. And so I was like, I'm going to start screen recording them and saving them on my computer.
Several of doctors and nurses who are just simply sharing their frontline experiences, and boom, they're gone,
Yeah.
because they're not maintaining the party
Not
line
me.
of
Well, and actually, Mark Zuckerberg came out and said, if you are saying anything that is not directly in alignment with what the World Health Organization is saying, you will be taken down. That is a violation of our community guidelines. It's like, wow, okay. So to me, there's a few things there. One is that anything that is getting taken down like that, it's like we should probably pay even more attention. It's like trying to tell the kid, don't look in the cookie jar. Like
Well, Amanda, here's my problem with this is that, I mean, I remember being a teenager and smoking marijuana and having a whole part of my life that I knew that if anyone knew outside of a small circle of people I knew, that I would go to jail. And so I grew up in this environment of culturally enforced paranoia. I knew it was okay, but it wasn't okay.
right,
But by the same token, my entire livelihood, yours too, these days, is we are astrologers. And astrology, just like a religion, just like a medical point of view, can be shut down so hard and fast. You know why? Because it's not the party line. It's pseudoscience. It's, if you listened to the intelligent people, the same people who are holding the party line about, the medical treatment of this virus. Again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but if you listen to that alone, then by the extension, we might find astrology having no voice on the internet. It's already difficult to get truth about astrology on Wikipedia because of their value judgments. But what if all of a sudden any post that had the word astrology, cosmic, or anything like that in it, all of a sudden was not allowed? And these are private companies. Legally, they can do it. It's not like it's like when you come to my YouTube page. If I don't like what you're saying, I can delete the post. It's not anything about freedom of speech. It's like you're at my dinner table. And by that same extension, although that gets tricky because YouTube, Google, Facebook, I mean, these are monopolies. There are no other companies that can replace them right now. And yet there's, again, a deep issue here that is about Pluto. Pluto is suppression, repression. We have power. We have Saturn, Pluto. Every time, look, I can, the whole Galileo story, You know, how Galileo spent, 29, 30 years under house arrest. Well, Galileo's whole saga was basically tied to Saturn-Pluto conjunction cycle. Giordano Bruno, who was the last person to be burned at the stake in Rome. You can still go to the spot, in the Vatican where they have, it's not in the Vatican, it's in Rome, where they actually have the spot where the last cross burning took place. We're talking, I think, probably 15th century, if I'm not mistaken. That occurred on a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. When we look at the massive waves of either scientific and or religious beliefs clashing, these are about boundary issues that are metaphysical. A metaphysical boundary issue is my belief conflicts with your belief. Going back to, I think it was 4th century AD, the Emperor Justinian, and this was in Constantinople, now Istanbul. There was a tax revolt that was going on, and basically people were trying to rebel against the suppressive regime, and he sent his imperial troops into a sporting arena in Constantinople and killed 25,000 people. By hand. There was no machine guns. There was no weapons like that. This was like one-on-one with knives, swords, and instruments of bludgeoning. Sorry to be so graphic, but 25. The gates were completely locked, and the troops were instructed not to leave until everyone was killed. That was basically, don't fuck with Saturn. Don't fuck with authority. Don't mess. And so we see what happens is that when people in control feel threatened, they get a bit crazy. Or it may be that crazy isn't quite the right word. They go into survival mode, because I'm not judging whether what they're protecting is good or bad. You would do the same thing if you were protecting your home or your children, And so when we feel like our boundaries are being infringed upon, boundaries are Saturn, Pluto doesn't care about boundaries. Pluto and doesn't care whether you're for this or against this. Pluto is disintegrating those boundaries. And of course, Jupiter being here at the exact same time, is magnifying this whole thing. And so, yes, this is not just a little issue. It's not going to go away. And yes, we are all weary. And yes, there are things that we can do, and it has to do with getting breath, with breathing. It has to do, the way we combat tiredness is with oxygenation. My personal trainer called a little bit ago, and he was canceled my workout today. And I went out and did a little bit of jogging and stairs along the river behind my house, because it's easy. I'm basically a lazy person. It's easy for me to sit at my desk or pull up another book. I have plenty of them to read and reread. But we all have to work really hard at breathing. I caught a little clip of who's the governor's brother, the MSNBC. I don't watch TV a lot. Is it Andrew Cuomo? He actually got a bad case of this virus. And he said that a friend of his who is an in-the-know medical person said, don't go to a hospital and force breathe. He goes, stand up. And he said, put your hands over your head. He goes, I can't, it hurts. He goes, do it anyhow. He goes, it really hurts. Keep your hands stretched. Now take a breath. He goes, I can't, it really. And he basically led him through this thing. He said, you need to be doing this 20 times a day, because that is taking over your lungs. And the worst thing you can do is become Taurus. I mean, lethargic, because that's what Taurus does well. Now, again, a Taurus working does that well too, but we have this tendency to be lazy, and we cannot be lazy now. We can be weary, but we need to combat that weariness by moving, breathing, and thinking. And thinking doesn't mean watching your favorite TV show, whether it's Rachel Maddow or whether it's I can't even think of anyone's name on Fox. I think that's a good sign. I'm not sure. But it doesn't mean just plugging your mind up with the same old contaminants. And again, I don't care what side of the fence you're on. It's all contaminants if that's the only thing you're getting.
Yes.
And so we need to use this month of May while we're being held back. And it'll go longer than May. And it doesn't mean there won't be pockets of, oh my God, it's freedom. We can go out. We can do this. And there are moments astrologically as the planets move from Taurus into Gemini. Mercury does first. Mercury moves into Gemini on May 11th. And then the sun moves into Gemini on May 20th. Both of those planets, as they move from Earth into air, both are going to make trines with Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. Boom, 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 over the course of a few days or several days. And so when they do, and of course the moon is going around and it's hitting aspects to that Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn like clockwork. Every few days, the moon is going to, for a few hours, conjunct or sextile or square or trine or oppose again and again and again. And so when this does, we get inklings of that same old story. But in particular, when Mercury does this from May 9th to the 12th, and when the sun does that same run from the 14th through the 22nd, these are times in which we need to do the work, even if we're weary, even if we're overwhelmed, even if we're working 10-hour days, even if we're just happy being laying on the couch and having the next, Corona beer, or whatever. And so there's definitely, May is a tricky month because in some ways it can make us become despondent, depressed, placid, lethargic, and that's exactly what we can't do.
Okay. Wow. Super clear. So this is, I've been saying, like, this is the time where we double down, triple down on our spiritual work, on the things that oxygenate us both physically and mentally, emotionally, the things that
Spiritually.
spiritually, the things that breathe air into us. And it's going to be harder we're going to have discipline in order to do that. There needs to be a discipline around the flow of our days. The other thing I've been thinking about is the ratio. Like, if we can shift the ratio of the amount of time where we're allowing someone else's projection or someone else's vision of the future cloud our own ability to see what is possible, when we're out of balance and someone else's vision, and we start to live in that person's vision, and we go, no, I don't want that vision, or whatever.
Yeah, of course, part of the problem there is that you and many people we know have spent large parts of their life, kind of doing some sort of spiritual, inner, psychological, therapeutic work, growth, whatever. But for some people to just shut off that external would create an absolute panic state, because if they went inward, they would go, I know what we need to do. We need to, and then make up shit based upon their own fears. and so again, we have
shadow
to
work.
be careful,
Yes.
about this one size fits all, which is
Right.
really the bottom line problem with the entire medical thing that's going on. One size does not fit all.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm mainly talking to our community right now, who, for the most part, for the most part, the people in our community, the people that have been studying astrology for, not everybody, I get it, but we always emphasize this piece and the shadow work piece, which is huge, what you just brought up, because you could go into the fear and then project out from there. So high self-awareness of where we're coming from. It sounds so cliche and new age, but the vibration from which we are creating is incredibly important to pay attention to right now. And we know when we're in dissonance. It doesn't feel good. When you're in dissonance, when you're in chaos. And so then the work is to get into a place where you can actually see and feel the truth, your truth inside of you, which none of this is easy. Like, this is the thing is this is the time where we're being asked to step up in entirely new ways, in entirely stressful circumstances, and still show up. So it sounds to me, so you say patience, doing the internal work that is going to result in the outer reality that so many of us believe and know is possible, but there is going to be a huge process for us to get there. So, and each one of us is holding keys for that. And then what all the things that you can do to combat weariness, which is all those things that oxygenate, having some sort of schedule and discipline and plan in place for yourself. Like, when you know you're not going to want to do it, just have that thing where it's like, this is non-negotiable. I have to do this no matter how I feel.
About self-care, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing that so many of us put at the bottom of the list, or just, don't do. And it's the most important thing right now. I remember people in the 2020 forecast event focusing so much on self-care. And it sounds, again, it's one of those cliche, like, self-care things, like, and the definition and the actual way that looks for people is so different. But
so the Paul Simon song that's been going through my head is an American tune. And the lyrics are, many's the time I've been mistaken, and many times confused. Yes, and often felt forsaken, and certainly misused. But I'm all right. I'm all right. I'm just weary to my bones. Still, you don't expect to be bright and bon vivant, so far away from home. So far away from home. And the last line of that goes, we came on a ship they called Mayflower. We came on a ship that sailed the moon. We came in an age's most uncertain hour and sing an American tune. But it's all right. It's all right. You can't be forever blessed. Still, tomorrow's going to be another working day, and I'm trying to get some rest. That's all. I'm trying to get some rest. I think that that's really a key piece of May, is this whole need to, in between whatever the panic and the freaking out and the weariness and the crawling the walls and the difficulties we may be having, either because we're in relationship or because we're not in relationship, and because we, either because we're financially stressed. I mean, that's taking a huge toll on everyone, including the members of our own community. And that makes it difficult to find that place to get rest, peace, calm in the middle of the storm, because we're going to need that strength, because this is not, what's that saying? It's a marathon, not a sprint. And so I think that's really the message of May, is that if you're not running a marathon right now, at least get your butt in training.
Well, and I know so many of you have been training for years. I mean, you really have been training for years, and now it's the time where you're training. It's like we just upped the ante. And yeah, Rick, thank you so much. It's such a blessing to have you.
Well, maybe we're going to have to come back next week and talk about the incredible Scorpio full moon, which I think may be next Thursday or Friday.
Well, great. I'll just expect a text from me at some point. Rick, we need you. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much, all of you, for all of your comments and all your support and your enthusiasm for the work that we're doing here at Astrology Hub, and all the amazing astrologers that we get to share with you. So thank you so much for continuing to make your comments and engage with us that way. We love it. For those of you who haven't yet signed up to get alerts, or it's not an alert, it's a weekly digest that details all the different special edition episodes that I did in the last week. So if you want to get that summary email, go to astrologyhub.com/podcast, astrologyhub.com/podcast, and sign up there where it says sign up. I don't know exactly what it says. And you'll get something once a week saying, here's all the different videos. Here's the podcast episodes. Here's the articles we just made. Did you see the article that we made about,
Yeah.
yeah. So there's, we're turning a lot of these episodes into articles that you can read and share with people. So,
Well, thank you, Amanda. Stay calm, stay peaceful, and keep doing the awesome work that you're doing. We all need this right now.
thank you. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Happy Beltane. Happy May Day, Lay Day. Sending you lots and lots of love. Aloha.